Yeah, this is where I was born. This is where I grew up. That's where I found a dead body.
It's great to have you here doing this documentary with us. Could you tell us where you grew up, man?
On the Hacking River in the Royal National Park, a place called Bonnie Vale in between Main Bar and Bundaberg. We lived in a place called the Simpsons Hotel. It was an old hotel that the people used to come across from Cronulla in their boats and that and have parties at Bonnie Vale because it's a big picnic area and surrounded by 36,000 acres of national park and the beach. And it goes down the Hacking River. It goes all the way to Audley and right out to Cronulla and Gibbon and the sea. So we were down the river a bit. And that's where I was born. And the Simpsons Hotel burnt down at 3, and that's my first memory because I remember all the sirens. I remember all the sirens and the way people were looking at us. Their faces were really sad. Well, I didn't know we'd gotten out in our pyjamas and we'd lost everything and the house had burnt down and we had nothing, and they even had to have a charity thing to give us clothes and to help us, you know. So they had a big thing like that. And we lived in that hall after the house burnt down till they rebuilt it, a big fibro joint they built. But the place we lived in was so rat-riddled they had to pull that down, and we ended up living in one of the shacks at Bonnie Vale, a little place called the Hollow Log. Where it's at the back there, where the fence is, that was our part. Around the front, and it's big. The shop's big because it's got a warehouse too, see? And then the rest of it's our house, which wasn't real wide, but it was long, 3 bedrooms. It's very beautiful, and that's where I used to walk around the point, go surfing. There goes the ferry.
Why did the man become a park ranger?
Well, Mum and Dad moved to Bonnie Vale and they were part of the setup with the tents and all the things down there where they were building shacks and that. And so it was such a big gathering, they decided to make a ranger's quarters to do the pick up the rubbish and change the toilets and collect the rent. And picnickers coming in and out, charging them, 20 cents it was back then, to get a ticket to come into the park. So my dad applied for the job and got it. That's how we ended up moving into the big house at Simpsons Hotel, which was pretty special, but I didn't know back then, I was a baby. So I had 3 older brothers that remember the Simpsons Hotel better than I, but it's become an iconic place. It would have been a heritage house by now. I mean, it was almost back then. But it's a shame that it was burnt down to the ground. There's suspicion the next door neighbours who own the shop, he'd moved his things like it was in 55, so he had things like stereos and things like that he'd moved before the fire, which was suspicious. That's all I remember about it. But I remember when they rebuilt it, it was a big fibro monstrosity. But it was still our place and we still had somewhere to live. And Bonnie Vale, growing up in Bonnie Vale, I'd look out the window and see the picnic areas and the bush. We'd see the deers at night with the car lights on them, and it was a beautiful place to grow up. And right beside the picnic areas was the river, the Port Hacking River that ran down in between Bundaberg and Cronulla. So it was a very good place to grow up.
Before cars, how did your parents get around?
Yeah, well, my parents told me stories about how they'd travelled. It took them 2 days to get home from Sutherland by horse and cart through the national park. They'd had to camp overnight and stuff, so that was a long time ago. That was before they would have had roads, proper roads, through the national park like they do now. I mean, I was only about 12 or 11 when they tarred the Bundaberg Road, which wasn't tarred till early 60s, I'd say. And it took about 2 hours to drive that 6 miles. The road was so rough. I remember my father saying, "Look at that, son, 9 minutes it took when the road was tarred." So it really made a big difference. It's 24 miles by road. It's a 20-minute ride on the ferry. And the ferry goes once every hour, there and back. So it used to come on the half hour to begin with, and then it turned around to the hour. But say at 1:30, 2:30, 3:30. I think it didn't go at 1:30. It went at 11:30 and 1:30. They missed 12:30 or something like that. So it was every half an hour, and 1 hour at lunch was missed. And then it'd finish about 7 o'clock at night. So the only way to get home to Bundaberg was to either hitchhike or get a taxi home or have a car.
How many people lived there?
Oh, in them days, there wouldn't have been... There's about a bit over 3,000, I'd say now. Might even be more, but there wouldn't have been 1,000, I'd say, back then in the 50s. It was... all the places where the football oval is now was all swamps and back roads and stuff like that. So they've cleared a lot of land, and the new real estate wasn't there till I was about 11, because I remember that being built in primary school. Because they always used to sing to us when I was a kid, "Build on the rock and not upon the sand," and the real estate was just looked like a beach when they cleared it, you know, from the shrub and everything. So it was sort of like a contradiction to me of what we were being taught. I thought the place was going to sink, the real estate was going to sink. Maybe it is, I don't know.
You were saying you found a dead body. What's the story behind that, eh?
About 100 yards from getting off the point, and I turned around and I seen my dog licking at something, and it was a dead woman lying in about 6 inches of water. She'd drowned that night. She'd wandered off and fell in the water. I think she was a little bit crazy, I think. Her husband was a drunk, so... Bundaberg was pretty rough back in them days. You know, it wasn't like... It's a bit more yuppie and a bit more sort of like with social media and everything, everybody's a lot more etiquette and all them sort of things. And oh, look, this is a Friday. Good breaks, eh? Oh, it'll never be the same. Never. Never be like it used to be. It's me, Johnny. I'm home.